vicious.
That's amazing. Yeah, I would love to see Darth Dawkins debate Matt Dillahunty because Matt kind of has a short fuse too.
Oh yeah.
Um, he gets really short with people, and so does Darth Dawkins. Um, I think Jack Angstrich, you know who he is?
No, that's
Oh
not.
yeah, he's like the atheist Darth Dawkins.
Oh,
Yeah, he's very, very short
vicious.
fuse. He does the same tactics that Darth Dawkins do. When those two get in a room, oh my God,
Oh,
it's like it just starts flying. The sparks start flying. It's like a fireworks show, man. They
oh,
go at it.
be fun to watch as long as there was
Yeah,
like a glass wall to protect you from the blood.
for real. Let me see if I can find something. Darth Dawkins. Hold on a second.
No word from our end yet, so I don't know.
Yeah,
But he said he was working on something, so
yeah, he might not be able to make it.
Aaron would be a good one to have on if Victor shows up because he can answer a lot of the scientific questions that he was asking Mike.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was kind of hoping for. That would be a really good one, if that could happen. Excuse me. Um, let's see if I can get this to play. Just for something to listen to real quick.
Isn't an argument to show that knowledge is possible. So the question is, does Darwin's have a justification for his belief that knowledge is possible? Because remember, Darwin's view is that beliefs that don't have a justification are pure fantasy, right? So in order for him to not have a belief that knowledge is possible, which is pure fantasy, he's going to have a justification for that belief. Now, justifications come in forms, right? Forms. And there can be an a priori argument to show that his belief that knowledge is possible by either giving it. I can't wait to.
I'd rather hear from them.
I'm attempting to dialogue with you since you posed questions to me. Now, I'm asking.
I'd like to address that.
I'm asking you.
James.
I'd like to address
my question now, James.
Yes.
Now, James. Do you think that the skeptics are claiming that they have knowledge, that it is just based upon probability, or is it something more in your view, James?
I don't know.
Okay, good. Well, then there's no point in discussing any further about what the skeptics' view are vis-a-vis my conversation with you.
It doesn't seem like even if one presupposes.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, James. Go ahead.
You can ask Dave.
James, I can't hear you. There's somebody talking over you. Go ahead, James.
So
he's such a Karen.
Yeah. So you got two of them doing the same thing. You're interrupting me. No, you're interrupting me. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's silly.
Did you ever see the after show for? It was when Aaron Raw had with Ken Hovind on Non Sequitur.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
G-Man shows up.
Yeah. Oh, G-Man. Yeah.
That was pure gold.
Yep. Dogs from non-dogs and. You mean to tell me you can fish? An elephant came from a fish, really?
Oh, that was the best.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous.
My guts were sore for 2 days after
Yeah.
watching that. I just couldn't stop laughing.
It's hilarious. I used to do a lot more debates than I have recently, and it's a lot. It can be a lot of fun, but unfortunately, I think that it's gotten so saturated now that people aren't so aggressive to get into these sort of debates. Now it's sort of like your mainstay people are doing it.
Yeah.
Seems that way to me, you know. Even T Jump, I don't know if you know who he is. He's got a channel and the atheist debater, and he was like undefeated, one of these undefeated. He went at it with Darth Dawkins and won, like just tore him up. You know, he's like a really good debater.
What's his name again?
T Jump.
Oh, Tom Jump.
Tom Jump, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tom's pretty good.
Yeah. He is. I had him on a show one time. We did an interview. But yeah, he's really good.
I
But
know a great guy. Loves to do video debates, but he can never get any takers. And he's been on Tom Jump. A really good guy is an Australian guy named James Taylor.
James Taylor sounds familiar.
He used to be a street pastor.
Mm-hmm.
Super educated, brilliant guy, and hardcore atheist now.
Oh.
And he's got probably the calmest demeanor you can imagine, but his debate can be like just subtly deadly. You know, he can kill you with a very quiet, kind word.
Mm-hmm.
And
I see it here. T Jump and Pastor Taylor James.
Yep, that's probably him. Or no, there is a Taylor James who is a theist. This guy's James Taylor from Australia.
Yeah.
Big beard.
Ah. Okay, we have another guy, a theist, said he wants to jump in. I just gave him the link.
Gosh, I hope to do more of these things in taps.
Yeah. This guy Isaiah, if he comes in, he's a cool guy. He's a theist. He's very progressive. I always call him he's a weak-kneed flag waving Christian.
Perez?
He's a flag waving phony. That's what I call him because he's you know what I mean? Like he doesn't stand up for the real thing, you know?
If it's Isaiah Perez, I know.
Yeah, that's
who
him.
you're talking about.
Yeah.
He's kind of living a bit of a dual life.
Yeah.
He's got a podcast and he invites atheists on to talk.
Yep.
And then when he's on Facebook, he's doing the most low hanging fruit posts. Atheism is a religion.
It's a cult. Yeah, the cult of atheism. Yeah. And then when he gets on, he's real empathetic and very, conversational and soft. Yeah. That's why I call him he's a phony. He's a flag waving phony. Yeah. And, but he's cool. I mean, we talk and, we kind of, I think he's close to being an atheist himself. He's just, for some reason,
I think he's close to it, but I think he's got so much well poisoning on the label that he's moot to, like you might get him to call himself an agnostic at some point because he's got a straw man of what agnosticism is too.
Yeah. We were talking this morning. I was talking to Isaiah and he was like, you're very reasoned, man. I want you to come on and challenge this one Christian because I hate these fundy Christians, and I want you to just kind of destroy this guy with me. And it's like, dude, are you an atheist and which one are you, man? Are you on our team or which team are you on, man? He's like, no, I'll always be a Christian because of my personal experience. He's one of these experiencers. So I'm like, that's a hard one. And the other one is if they say that, their religion keeps them from doing bad things, You know, these people that, oh, if it wasn't for my Christianity, I would go out and rape and murder as many people as I could get away with. And I'm
Please,
always like, well, please
Christianity
stay doing what you do, man. If that's what you need,
keeping you from doing that.
yeah,
Yeah,
please do us a favor and stay that way. But
exactly.
you do know that doesn't prove that your shit is correct, right? That doesn't.
Yeah,
Like,
those are the ones that kind of scare me because that's all. That's a thin line between them and doing atrocities.
yeah.
Maybe a little fantasy is not such a bad thing.
Oh yeah. I don't really, in a lot of time, in my heart of hearts, especially if I get to know someone, I don't really believe they really believe that. I think they want to believe that as a talking point to kind of talk themselves into the
Yeah,
religion or whatever.
they're trying to
Um,
convince themselves.
right. It's like,
Point.
if I walk away, I'm gonna be a bad person. You know, I've always been told that, and but I don't want to say that against other people because I know that it kind of falls flat as an argument. They probably tried it once or twice and realized pretty quick it doesn't fly. So,
Yeah.
you know, they'll only apply it to themselves.
I honestly think for a lot of them, there's a sunken cost bias.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've been doing this
Mm-hmm.
for this long. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
giving up and swapping
Yep.
to the enemy side.
Yeah.
Tribalism is the big deal with religion.
Oh, I went through it. I was a Jehovah Witness for years, man. And you know, that religion, part of the effectiveness is they get you to invest so much of your life and energy and everything.
Yeah.
And it makes it really kind of hard to walk away because you're so invested and you've got all your, you know, they've managed to isolate you from all your friends and family. So now where you, and that used to always be the thing, you know, if you want to leave the truth, where are you going to go? You've got no other community. You've got, and they'd always say that at meetings, but where are you going to go? And it's effective. It is effective. Much more effective than hellfire because Jehovah's Witnesses didn't believe in hellfire, you know, and afterlife and stuff. They sort of believed in a possible resurrection of your body in some future, but you know, they didn't like threaten you with eternal torment. In fact, when you die, you just go to sleep and you don't. So you always wonder, like, then what's the point? Like, if that's all there is, then what keeps you in the religion? You would think, but as someone who's been in it, I can tell you that other thing, that getting you invested into that is what really gets people. So you're right, that sunken, you know,
Who the hell are you?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's enough. That's all you need to do is get them enough isolation and make them needy, and let them know, you know, without us, you don't have anything. You know,
Exactly.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
sad.
Stephen Hassan. Uh, if you look for Stephen Hassan and the word bite, he's the expert on cult, like how to identify a cult.
Mm-hmm.
The bite model is 4 different dimensions, and if the belief system that you have fits into each of the 4 columns, it's a cult.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
it's brilliant. And of course, one of them, I think it's under the B, is what we tell you is the truth and what everybody else tells you.
Oh yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Make you feel special. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're part of an elite group, right? Kind of.
Yes, yes. That's conspiracy theory minded people fall into that too. They,
Oh yes, we got
you
enough of
know,
those these days.
I'm the smartest guy in the room because I can connect all the dots to show you why.
I got to be honest. I get more arguments with science deniers than I do like creationists and theists these days, because I don't know. It always, with theists, it always ends up being an argument about morality.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And you know, when you can't agree on what morality is, you you're just talking past each other, right?
Right. Yeah, they're really hard to deal with too. I because they're so like, especially when they're combined. Like one of the guys that Isaiah wants me to. We've already had round one. We're supposed to be doing round two discussion. So he's like in the Trump cult. So he thinks Trump is like God's messenger guy,
No.
and even if he's a Christian nationalist on top of that, and
Gee.
then he's got all these conspiracies to back that up. But then he's also like a fundamentalist Christian. Hates. He thinks that Muslims should be deported, like every one of them. Like,
How many different flavors of Kool-Aid has this guy drank?
man, it's like he's like on the rainbow, man. He's like he's hit every flavor and color there is, and it's like, where do you even start with these people? Like, so we're gonna try to go at it again. This time, we're gonna try to hit something a little more basic to his belief, because what I want to do is get down to his basic epistemology. Like, we can talk about all these surface level things and just run in circles all day long, but if we can get down to like, what is the root at the bottom of your epistemology? Like, what do you consider evidence? Do you even think evidence is necessary? Like, and if you do, what do you consider as good evidence versus bad? How do you distinguish between imagination and reality? Like, let's get down to the nitty gritty so we can at least start somewhere we have something in common. Because right now we're like, we can't agree on anything. So it's hard to talk to people like that. They drive you crazy.
Usually, like, now, this is just my experience. I found that they just have one, like, all epistemologies are based on some assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that they basically just add one assumption, and that's that a God exists. They're God by coincidence.
Yeah.
But I get down to that by usually saying, okay, can we agree that the universe exists?
Mm-hmm.
Now, usually, unless they're completely wacko, they have no problem with that.
Right.
And then I ask them, do you agree that we can learn things about that universe?
Mm-hmm.
And they usually are okay on that.
Mm-hmm.
Third, I'm like, okay, so do you agree that models of reality that can make good predictions are better than models that can't? And they're usually like, okay, if I think I know what you're meaning. I say, okay, well, think what's more useful, astronomy or astrology?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, okay, I get what you're saying. I say, okay, that's the only assumptions that science is based on.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally it.
Mm-hmm.
I said, what do you can usually get them to admit that they assume that a God exists. And you say, okay, so when you make an argument for a God, you're making a tautology.
Mm-hmm.
You're just leaving out that major premise from your argument. But usually when you get that far, it's when you realize they don't even know what a syllogism is.
Yeah. And I try to get, the other thing too is like, when I was speaking to some, who was I speaking? I forget who it was, but, Alejandro. And I was asking him, because he was asking me, what is your epistemology? I said, well, part of what my epistemology entails, and let me see if you agree with it, Alejandro, is to make the least amount of assumptions as possible. So, like, if I have more assumptions, those are more points of failure that could possibly, play out. So to kind of keep from making that, I try to make least amount of assumptions. I understand you have to make maybe one or two, but I try to make as least amount as possible. So would you agree to that? Does that make sense to you? And they're like, oh yeah. And that's why I say God is the most simplest, it's the most parsimonious thing. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe, but let's define your God. well, he's all loving, he's all powerful, he's got all these crazy infinite, you know, attributes. And, I'm like, well, all I'm saying is that I can go along, I can grant that there's some endpoint, there's some necessary thing at the very bottom, but I just keep it there. I just say it could be the universe, some eternal cosmos or something, right? And that's more parsimonious than your God, because your God entails all these different things. And you just said that, your epistemology is to make the least amount of assumption. I've just demonstrated
Yeah.
an example that counters yours to the T, right? And then they'll never get it though. They're like, yeah, but that's just impossible. God has to be all loving. He has to be personal. He has to be jealous. He has to be, come in the form of Jesus or whatever. It's like, why? Why?
It's a complete paradox.
Yeah.
The story got more. I just never ceases to amaze me how you just say, okay, let's come down to a sensible definition, a coherent definition, and you'll end up getting a string of statements of unrestricted comprehension. Like you say, the all powerful, all loving, blah blah blah.
The
blah.
maximally great. It's the greatest thing. That was Alejandro's thing. It was, God is defined as the greatest of all things. It's like, well, isn't greatness a subjective thing? Like, so he's the greatest murderer? Like,
It's
what
like
do you mean?
Alvin Plantinga died, and he's like rolled up his ashes into a doobie and
Yeah.
smoked it.
Yeah. Yeah. And his little gotcha was like, is there a greatest tree? Is there a tallest tree? It's like, if you say yes, then gotcha. That's God. That's analogous to God, in which you just self-refuted yourself. But if you say no, then it's like, oh, so that's impossible. That's a contradiction. There's got to be something that's taller than something else or smaller than. So he thinks he's got you either way. It's like the dumbest argument in the world. Like, it's like, dude,
So wish you could like leap ahead.
are you a little muffled?
I said, you so wish you could leap ahead, however many years it takes for them to, at a time when they finally figured out it's all bullshit.
Yeah, really.
You could show them how stupid their arguments were.
Yeah. Remember when you said this? That was awesome.
I'm never going to let you down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, what was the other one? Oh, yeah. Then we had a discussion on morality. And so I came up with a thought experiment, because he was saying that he was promoting like divine authority. That was his whole thing, was God. Well, God, because he's God, he has the right to do whatever he wants, and we can't know what's moral unless he was to dictate it to us, and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, so let me ask you this question to kind of understand where you're coming from. I say, you've got a guy in the bank. You've got two guys. They're in two different banks. One guy's in the bank. There's a camera on the wall. He sees the camera. He knows he's being watched. The guy in front of him drops his wallet, and there's like $1,000 in the wallet. But the guy, because he's being watched by the camera, says, damn it, let me give him back his wallet. So he gives him his wallet. Then person B, he knows there's no camera. He's not being watched. But he sees the guy drop the wallet, and he's like, I would hate for someone to take my shit from me, so let me give the guy back his wallet. And he gives it to him. So I said, so out of the two people, who is more moral, person A or person B? And he's like, oh, person A. It's like, what? Like,
that's when you know he got it. Like,
yeah.
give an inch.
Oh, it argued the whole night about it. It's like, yeah, person A, because he goes, number one, person B doesn't exist in reality.
Oh, for crying out.
And it was so funny. I was like, actually, I work at a hospital. I'm an atheist, and I found a wallet, and it had like a lot of money, not $1,000, but it had like some money in the wallet, and I could have pocketed the money, but I turned it into the front desk lost and found. And I don't believe in God. No one watched me. No one saw me. I could have very easily pocketed that money, but I didn't. So how do you explain that? And he's like, well, I find that very hard to believe. I'm like, oh, great. Now you're going to question my integrity. Great. That's a great way to argue. That's a great way to have a conversation, you know.
Oh, these folks are so conditioned.
Mm-hmm.
If you're an atheist, then you're the absolute worst.
Yeah, you're garbage. You're a garbage person.
And the guys like Isaiah, they'll talk sweet to you, you know, try and be
Mm-hmm.
kind and stuff. But, you know, the reality is they're thinking, you know, you're not worth, you know.
You know, I talked to Isaiah, and I ended up blocking him at one, and I unblocked him. But I blocked him at one point because we had a conversation, and what kept being repeated was I saw a conversation with him and Oz, this other guy that has a channel, and he kept repeating that, you know, I think God loves trans people, blah blah blah, and the reason I love them is because I know that, you know, their terrible behavior is because they're sinful, and I'm no better than them. They can be forgiven too, and he just kept telling me that, and I'm like, you understand that's like gaslighting people, like you're just assuming in that these are bad behaviors, and what I'm trying to tell you is, how is this bad? You're not making the case that this is bad behavior. It's like, no, no, no. And he kept acting like he understood, but then he'd be like, you know, and gay people and stuff, like, you know, I don't judge them because as bad as they are, you know, I don't think that, you know, I'm like, dude, you're just getting on my nerves for that
You're-
shit.
You're on the right side of that argument, but for all the wrong reasons.
Right, right, right. And I just blocked him. I was just like, it just irritated me. And but then, you know, I saw another, and I said, well, let me open up. Let me try to talk to this guy again. And we have, and we've kind of mend fences on that. And I think what it comes down to is he believes that, you know, being queer is sinful, right? And you're never going to get him off of that. Like he's never going to, like he told me, he says, I'll never say that, you know, being queer, being gay, and all that is a good thing. Like I'll never say that. But what I will do is I'll feel empathetic for them. I'll give them money if they have problems, you know, like with bullying, and like he goes with all these
Oh yeah,
sites or something.
and I believe that he would.
Yeah,
I really do.
yeah,
But he's like, you know, it's the wrong reason. It's not that it's a bad thing or a good thing. It's a thing.
it's a thing, right?
The human thing.
Right, right. And that's what I keep trying to tell him is that, you know, everything is on kind of like a spectrum, like good, bad. Anything that people identify with is on a spectrum, and it's okay though. Like if you don't resonate with that, it's fine. Like it's fine. But just, you know, I think that some of the language you use can be offensive. And I'm not queer or gay or anything like that. Like, and I feel bad when you talk like that. So, you know what I mean? Like, and then I'm an atheist, but you're saying that atheists don't have those same moral, you know, oomph that Christian, but yet I'm feeling more bad for, you know, like how, like, doesn't that tell you something? Like,
You know, it never ceases to amaze me how almost everything to these folks is a dichotomy.
mm-hmm,
And the things that are actual dichotomies are kind of a spectrum, like that,
mm-hmm,
you know, that middle ground of agnosticism being
mm-hmm,
middle ground. It's like,
mm-hmm.
no, you either believe there's a God or you don't.
Right,
It's that simple.
right.
And if you're an agnostic, It just means you're not making a claim to know whether that's true or not.
Right.
You know,
So it has to do with knowledge. And I haven't surveyed the whole universe to know whether something like a God exists or not. So I just kind of like don't know. So, and that informs my beliefs because I usually believe things that I know to be true or false, you know. And so if I don't know, then I kind of withhold my beliefs on it, you know, until I do have the evidence that I need sufficiently. And they just don't understand that. It's like, no, so what you're saying is God doesn't exist, you know, because if you don't believe it, you must believe the alternative view. It's like, no, like how many, you know, what color socks am I wearing? You know, hey, you don't know, or you're saying that you know that my socks are not black.
I don't know, therefore I do know.
Yeah, right. You know, it's just really weird.
You know, the indoctrination, it comes down to it. If you were brought up with a belief system,
Hmm.
it's the only tool you have is a hammer.
Yep.
Thing. So atheism must be a belief system too, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or a
Mm-hmm.
cult, right?
That's right. It's a cult, the cult of atheism.
I remember I used to have a meme that I'd pop up on my wall every now and again. It was Al Pacino smoking the cigar from that movie where he's the devil. He
Mm-hmm.
goes, "Yeah, I'm in a cult." He goes, "We teach our people to not, you know, to think for
Yeah.
themselves," kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, I admit, like I was telling, you know, because I find common ground with just about everybody. And the one thing I notice is with a lot of groups that form, like atheist groups, I've been kind of blocked off from those as well. Like some of these atheist groups that, like politically, I would say I'm not a very political sort of person,
Mm-hmm.
but if you were to ask me like my political views, I'd be right down the middle somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of these groups though that I had joined and were supporting and that were supporting me were like promoting like either really far left
Right.
ideals or far right. And like if you don't fall in with their political views and they say, "Oh, you're not, you know, you're not a skeptic or you're not this or that." It's like you can't have a different opinion about these things. And it's always like my whole thing is like atheism has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with a lot of things that people might think it does, you know. And so I kind of got banned or blocked from a lot of these groups because they're like, you know, you don't fall in with our, you know, our little in group, you know.
Yeah.
Hey, how's it going, Diesel?
Hey,
Can you
Jack
hear me?
Bayard. This is the first time I've seen Jack Bayard, but I do want to say I do have the best bald head here out of the three of us. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, don't have as much shine anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a little hair growing in. Look.
I've actually been talking to JB. I just call him JB, but I've actually been talking to him for like the last like 2 years online. So the first time I've seen him, so pretty cool. Actually,
Cool,
regret all the stuff that I've said about your religion now. No, I'm just
The
kidding.
religion of
Inside joke.
atheism.
Inside,
We were just talking about that.
It's an inside joke.
Yeah. Atheism is a cult. The cult of atheism. Yeah.
I sometimes don't appreciate the fact that most people don't realize when you're trolling them online because you like the sarcasm meter doesn't really come off. Like it's hard to relay that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like a lot of times I'll say things without a lot of nuance, like in some of these groups, especially Fight on the Fence. And I'll leave it open, and a lot of people will say, "Well, you didn't explain it. Now you're just getting to, you know." I'm like, "Well, it's just a conversation starter. You know, it's not that serious. Number one, but number two, if you want to engage, then you can ask me questions. and we can kind of drill down into what it means and what I mean and this and that. But I'm not going to like create like a post or something like that, an op, and then explain every little detail. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to like say something very general just to kind of spark
Starting point.
conversation. Yeah, and it might even be a little edgy, let's put it that way, because it'll trigger like a Christian or a Muslim or somebody that, what do you mean this and that? Okay, cool, let's talk about it. We'll do it that way.
Well, can we agree just on one thing, that both sides get triggered too easily? What you say? We'll find common ground there.
I think for me, I've seen it on every side. I've seen people get triggered on all kinds of shit.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm going to say guilty as charged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Diesel, you triggered me really bad one time. I even blocked him.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, guilty as charged. But I'm trying not to. I think one of my things that I try to do is like Doug Pine Creek. I try to be more dead inside. I'm more stoic now than ever before, to where I don't get too passionate about a lot of things, because I find that way it's easier to talk stuff out, and leave the emotion out of the way.
So JB, I do want to give you a little bit of context, because I did get online to try to have genuine conversations with people from the opposite faith and, atheists. And what I found was that as soon as you start to disagree with people, they'll start in these groups. They'll start to insult you. Like one time, I disagreed with a guy on the post that he said. And he responded, da 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 da, you cuck. And I'm like, what's a cuck? I don't even know what that is. I had to go look it up.
It's not a good thing.
No.
I'm like, what is that? What is me liking? I mean, because it's true, I am a cuck. But what does that have to do with me liking to watch my wife have sex with another? What does that have to do with God? Like the cult of atheism. You know what I mean? We're talking about one thing, and you throw something out completely off base. What does that have to do with anything? You know what I mean? So it's like
blowing my mind. Go ahead.
I know, that was a joke. But you experience something like that, and you just keep experiencing it over and over and over, and you have someone who's willing to attack you on a personal level about your beliefs. And so finally, I just say, okay, you know what? Let me flip the script on every last thing that you guys have said. Literally everything I've got that's come out of the atheist side attacking Christians, I said, I'm just gonna flip it right on his head, throw it right back at you, and see how you guys like it. And then so when I started doing that, I mean, the atheists have totally lost their shit. But I'm like, I'm just repeating the same talking points that you guys have said, and I flipped them back onto you. So I just want to show you, you don't like it. You don't like being insulted like this. You shouldn't do it to you shouldn't denigrate other Christians the way that you're doing this online. What do you think, JB?
Yeah, but did you read further ahead to see if somebody had been doing to that atheist to start it?
Someone had been what?
Triggering the atheist before the atheist started. Or did you just pick up the argument at the point where the atheist started being a jerk?
Well, it's a vicious cycle, right? Wouldn't you agree with that?
But who in the situation started it? I'm not saying it's not the atheist sometimes. I'm just wondering if some of these times where you react, are you reading the whole thread, or are you just picking up where the atheist starts pushing it over the top?
Uh-huh.
It's because I've seen both. I'm not defending all atheists, because I know some atheists who are just complete assholes online. And
present company excluded.
Well,
that would be me.
There are times I've been an asshole. I'm not denying it. And I'm not saying that every single time that it was not me that started it, because sometimes most of my arguments aren't with the religious, they're with science deniers. I probably have a thing with 5 times as many science deniers as like religious people. That's and you get kind of snippy when people start pissing around the definition of truth, and you react sometimes, and we're human. I'm not saying we're not human. So
Sure.
it's better to take the whole conversation into view, and if your nerves are cool enough, try and cool the conversation, the heat down, right? You can't get anywhere in a conversation when you're blowing past each other, right?
Right. And I do have to say this, I've completely, and this is sad, this should not be the case, but I have completely given up having meaningful conversations with people online in threads. Now I completely resort to just trolling. And if I want to have like meaningful conversations, I try to do them on the podcast, because I think when you're just not seeing somebody face to face, you're inclined, like you don't feel any kind of like responsibility to the kind of things you're saying, whether it's hurtful or hateful or whatever. So it's like I can't have the kind of conversations I would like to have on these threads. When people go in there and they want to prove themselves right, I would like to get into those nuances and try to, like Scott and I, we bang out ideas and we're respectful. Even if we disagree on something, that's fine. We can respect each other. So yeah,
But don't you think you're kind of in a way? Don't you think that's kind of shooting yourself in the foot though? Because you obviously want to get them into these conversations, like online, like where you're face to face. It kind of, sends a different message when you're like dialogue. If you're trolling, it kind of gives a different impression. Because I've exchanged with you when you were trolling, and I've talked to you, and it's a whole different experience. And it'd be nice if it'd be nice to see, instead of trolling, you're actually inviting these people. Like, listen, come on and have a conversation with me. I'm not.
Yeah, I think that I can understand what Jack is saying there, because I think when I blocked you the first time, I think I had seen you trolling and I was engaging with you during some of those sessions. And I remember you used to always tell me, dude, don't take my stuff too serious. I'm just on these things, just kind of trolling.
Yeah.
And I never really paid attention. And when you said that, I would just always just kind of go off, or forget that you had told me that. And then I would just go off of, I'd see you trolling and I just kind of like, what the fuck? Is this guy crazy or what?
I just posted yesterday because it was my daughter's birthday, so it was a very special event. But you can get onto my timeline. What?
I saw that.
Yeah,
I liked your post.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. You could get on my my timeline all day, and you can see I don't post stuff like at all. I rarely get on. Maybe like once a week I'll spend 10 minutes and just scroll through there. Usually I'll just pop in and just see the kind of stuff that's going on. But it's like I have a lot of stuff to do. I have a lot of time. Like I don't have a lot of time, so I don't know. It just, some of it, I'm not gonna lie, some of it is a bit amusing to see people get so angry about stuff that you say. Some of the trolling got pretty bad during COVID-19. So I mean, if you're locked indoors all day, you don't really have so much to do. It's like you can only watch so many Netflix shows. So I did start. I genuinely have felt bad about it, because there are some times where, like, I don't know. I think just in humor, and sometimes people don't get humor or like the irony. For instance, people don't understand that sometimes I'm also trolling the Christian community, because I'll make such ridiculous, stupid arguments that like no rational person should be able to think that I'm actually representing the positions that I've done. I'll just give you an example. I'll give you one example. So I live here in South Korea, and BTS they were talking about possibly breaking up BTS because they have to do their military service. And so I made a post and I said, hey everyone, BTS might be breaking up here. And I said, you guys can basically thank God for the providence that he started the Korean War 50 years ago. so that eventually Koreans would get conscripted in their 20s. I mean, it was the most ridiculous, absurd post that I
Come
made, and I
on,
think
man.
any reasonable no, but I think any reasonable person, I was like, yeah, you're welcome from God, and I think any reasonable but I think any reasonable person, if you were being open-minded and level-headed, would have saw that as a joke. And I'm so glad a lot of atheists were like, that's actually pretty funny that they
Yeah.
said that. But I mean, you would not believe how much I triggered people, atheists. They got furious with me. They were so angry that I made that post. And I'm like, because Christians will do this kind of ridiculous stuff. You know what I mean? Like a hurricane will come through, destroy a whole church, kill like 1,000 people, and there'll be like a Bible inside of a church that didn't get destroyed in the fire. And they're like, oh, this is providence. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Dude,
Half
It's
the, con-
ridiculous.
half the congregation get killed, but the
yeah,
Bible survived. Yeah.
dude,
The
I'm
Bible
telling you,
didn't get hurt.
sometimes I pretend to be a Christian just to piss people off, and I'll say stuff like that. And so I understand. The reason I'm laughing is because it sounds like some stuff I would do. Because sometimes I go on there and I'll be like, "Thank God loves me, man," because the airplane went down and I walked away while all these other people fucking died.
Oh,
Thank you,
right.
God. Whatever, something like that. And oh man, people get triggered, and even Christians get mad. Like, dude, you shouldn't say it like that, though, man. Like, and I'm like, well, what's a better way to say it? I act real stupid, but
But JB, oh, sorry.
go
J-
right ahead, man.
Sorry. Were you finished? Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
JB, does that make sense though? Because you don't get that sometimes I'm actually trolling Christians and the stuff that I write,
No, I don't pick up on that at all. I'm
Yeah.
so in warfare mode with people that are anti-vax, that don't believe in evolution. I get caught up in these all the time, and I'm at the point where the moment anything falls slightly out of line with what we know to be true, I just attack, and I'm not perfect. I'm not looking at the nuance of, the potential of humor as opposed to,
Especially if you're used to, like, you're just used to the same old crazy comments from certain groups, then it's not really that surprising. So it's not really that hard to believe that you're actually saying this crazy shit because you've heard it so much.
You go into
Like,
the bias.
dude, I work at a Catholic hospital, man. I hear this shit every day, like, sincerely to my face. So this is like, I get people that are not only just fundy Christians, but they're also conspiracy theorists on top of it. So it's like, how do you even have a conversation? And it pisses you off so fucking bad that, when I get home and get online and I just hear more of the same shit, it's like, it's not surprising. Like, I've heard crazier shit at work, like.
Right. Well, for the record, I am definitely an evolutionist. I might have a slightly different interpretation of that, but I definitely do believe that humans definitely are a result of evolution. But there's probably some nuances that we'd have in that conversation. But there's that. I've been vaxxed. It was kind of mandatory here in South Korea.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not someone who's like conspiracy theories, whatever. But I mean, this is the honest to God truth, though, JB. I have more in common with secular humanists than I do with fundamentalist Christians.
Yeah,
I'm more concerned. Wait, what?
You and I talked about this.
Yeah, I'm more concerned by the evangelical right, the MAGAs. Those guys frighten me way more than like secular humanist people. Like I can get along. Probably 95% of the secular humanists, like I'd be okay with. Whereas like as opposed to like a trumpet, we might agree 50% of the time, maybe. You know what I mean? It might be 50%.
I always told you you're a flag waving phony Christian, so you're not a real Christian.
I've been told that.
Like when you talk about the nuance in evolution, that would be kind of interesting to hear, because I don't think I've heard your view on that. That'd be kind of interesting. So what is it about, like, how does your view of evolution differ than, say, your consensus view, maybe?
Okay, well, just because I'm a Christian and I believe that God created everything from the Bible, it doesn't tell you how he created everything,
Mhm.
So there's like the creation ex nihilo or whatever. You don't know what that means. You don't know how exactly God's forming
Right.
particles and the quantum level and all this stuff. None of that just like it's completely empty, right? And so
Mhm.
when I take a look at like the animal kingdom and I take a look at there's all these intricacies, I would say, the animal kingdom is far more interesting than the actual like human, what we know about humanity, it's far more complex. The animals have far greater visions and smell. If you take a look at like a falcon, for example, their eyes are so complex they could actually see they can actually see like some kind of like radiation. They have this ridiculous sight, and so you have all of these complexities that are going on there. And for me, I take a look at it and I say, well, what makes the most sense? Does it make sense that God just created stuff 6,000 years ago? Everything just got created 6,000 years ago. When I read the Bible, that doesn't even make sense. I would never read the Bible and say, oh, this is something I have to defend, Like I have to defend that the words are 6,000 years old, because I have studied, a little bit of astronomy and about how they come to some of the calculations about the planets and the stars, and that seems to make more sense to me than, to me, God seems more like a scientist than a magician. Like he's creating things methodically, and there's a process, there's a logic, there's a reason to it. Then he's just doing magic, in my
Mhm.
opinion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's interesting you said complex. I had taken a biology class a few years ago, and in the textbook it talked about complexity. And
Mhm.
complexity is an interesting word because, especially when I hear a lot of people toss that word around, like especially like creationists and atheist debates and stuff, that word gets tossed around, and it's kind of assumed on every side that, yeah, the complexity, yeah, it's there, yeah. And actually, what I kind of learned when I took that biology class is that actually humans are not as complex as, say, a mountain or another system that doesn't do half the things humans do. Like they went into complexity. They said actually, no one really knows what complexity even means. You know, like are we talking about, like, there's different views of complexity. Like, do we mean like here's a point, here's a point, here's a point, and then we connect them all with lines? Then the more points you get, then the more complex it is. You see all these crisscrossing lines to connect the whole network. They said, well, if you're looking at complexity in that way, a big rock would be more complex than a whole human being. Like, so that's not what we're talking about. So if we're not talking about that, then we're talking about function. But then for humans to function doesn't really require the sort of complexity that would, say, a planet or a tree, even a big tree, a big tall tree would require to do some of the functions that it does. It's real debatable whether, how do you really break down what functions are more complex. I think there's a bias. They say what they've kind of concluded is we have like this bias towards humans. Like we think word must be the complex thing because we think up shit. We think shit, and we don't know if trees think shit. So we think, oh, well, obviously we're more complex than trees. And actually, on every measure of the word, we're really not. And it's really kind of debatable. So I always just find that interesting how, that word is always thrown around like we're just supposed to know what we're talking about. But
So
so anyways, what is it about evolution? Are you like one of these folks that believe, say that there's some sort of intelligence that must have been in the driving force of evolution? Like it's not a blind
yeah,
process, but it's kind of guided evolution. Is that kind of what you mean?
I guess you could say, in a sense, I believe that God has created the mechanism for evolution. So, like, if you were to back up the clock to the beginning, um, And because evolutionists have said this as well, like if you were to back up the clock to the beginning, things might have played out differently, and we might look a lot differently. Animals might look a lot differently. Like if you take a look at like movies like Avatar, where there's beings there, they look very similar to beings that we have here, but they're just different. I think something like that might have happened, because I don't think it's necessary that God necessarily created everything that we see with absolute intention. Like I think he might have just created the mechanism behind it. And for me, if I didn't believe in God, I don't think I could ever wrap my mind around that mechanism just happening randomly by itself. I don't think I would ever get there, honestly.
What if not saying it is true, but what if there was some sort of intelligence at the bottom of nature that didn't require God? Could you go along with that? Like, let's say there's some kind of guiding force, like an intelligence, something that figures stuff out. I mean, for the very structural bottom of, say, biological systems, that were kind of like guiding intelligently evolution. Would that kind of undermine the whole God scenario, or like would it make God unnecessary in your view?
Oh, that would be interesting. I mean, to be honest, God, I don't understand these. I don't understand a lot of these, how the biologists come to these conclusions. I just approach it more from like a philosophical standpoint. So I don't really know. I don't really know too much about the actual processes that are going on, but I don't know. That would be an interesting. That's an interesting thought.
Could I share a really short video about that? Because I think this kind of like opens up the eyes, not just to creationists or people that are theists, but it also kind of opens up the eyes to skeptics and atheists about the issue, because I think a lot of assumptions are made on both sides that I think aren't necessarily necessary to explain stuff. And this video kind of like helped me understand that a lot better. So let me see if I can share something here. I think you guys will like this.
People tend to think of intelligence as being of two kinds. There is the quote-unquote real intelligence, which is what we are supposed to have. And then there's this idea of a collective intelligence. So swarms of bees, colonies of ants, shoals of fish, and so on. And people tend to think of those as radically different things. But the reality is all intelligence is collective intelligence. And this is because we are all made of parts. So you and I are collections of cells, and these cells, including neurons and various other cells in our body, have many competencies. This is because they were once separate individuals by themselves. They were unicellular organisms with all of the skills needed to survive in a complex world. And that journey that we all took, those progressive steps by which we construct ourselves, we construct our bodies, we construct our minds, that journey is maybe the most profound question in all of science. I'm Michael Levin, and I'm a developmental biologist at Tufts University. Developmental biology is maybe the most magical of all sciences, because you get to see with your own eyes that journey that we all take from physics to mind. We all start out life as an unfertilized oocyte, and then slowly, gradually, step by step, that oocyte turns into a bunch of cells that self-construct an embryo, and eventually that embryo matures and becomes a large-scale adult. In the case of a human, it will be an individual with metacognitive capacities and the ability to reason, but we all have our origin in that chemistry and physics of that initial oocyte. And the magic of developmental biology is that there is a mechanism by which all of these cells get together and they are able to cooperate towards large-scale goals. This is the notion that biology uses what I call a multi-scale competency architecture, which basically means that we are not simply nested structurally in terms of cells which comprise tissues, comprising organs of bodies, and then ultimately societies and so on. That's obviously true on a structural level. But more interesting is the fact that each of these layers has certain problem-solving competencies. Each one solves problems in their own space. So cells are simultaneously solving problems in physiological spaces and metabolic spaces and gene expression spaces, and tissues and organs are solving those problems. But for example, during embryogenesis or regeneration, they're also solving problems in anatomical space. They're trying to navigate a path from the shape of an early embryo or a fertilized zygote all the way up to the complexity of a human body with all of the different types of organs and structures. So the competency architecture refers to the fact that all of the parts inside of us and inside of all other creatures are themselves competent agents with preferences, with goals, with various abilities to pursue those goals, and other types of problem-solving capacities. What evolution has given us is this remarkable architecture where every level shapes the behavioral landscape of the levels below, and the levels below do clever and interesting things that allow the levels above not to have to micromanage and to be able to control in an interesting top-down capacity. One of the most important things about this emerging field of diverse intelligence is that we as humans have very limited capacity and finely honed ability to see intelligence in medium-sized objects moving at medium speeds through three-dimensional space. So we see other primates and we see crows and we see dolphins, and we have some ability to recognize intelligence. But we really are very bad at recognizing intelligence in unconventional embodiments, where our basic expectations strain against this idea that there could be intelligence in something extremely small or extremely large. People often criticize this approach by saying, well, then anything goes. If you can pick up a rock and say, I think this rock is cognitive and intelligent, there's a spirit with hopes and dreams inside of every rock. That's not what this is. This is quite different. As an engineer, what you have to do is you have to come up with a way to look at a particular system that doesn't overestimate its intelligence or underestimate its intelligence. If you treat complex animals as if they were clockwork, you're going to miss everything that's important and exciting about how they work. If you treat a clock as if it had a complex intelligence, you're going to waste a lot of time. But getting it right is fundamentally important. And so you have this spectrum where the engineer has to pick the right level for the right system. And it's critical not to then say, well, that doesn't sound like human intelligence. Right, we're looking for the basic minimal version. So I think it should have two things. The first thing it should have is some degree of goal-directedness, some ability to take different paths to get to the same goal. So this is William James's definition of intelligence. And it has to have some ability to undertake actions that are not completely determined by local circumstances. So you start with all of that in systems that have scaled up those basic, very fundamental, non-zero levels of agency. We call that life. So it is a spectrum, and I think that in this universe, it goes all the way to the bottom. It's very hard for people to think about these unconventional kinds of intelligences that may be either too large or too small. And of course, they often work in other spaces. So we're good with three-dimensional space, but imagine if we had a primary sense of our own blood chemistry. If you could feel your blood chemistry the way that you currently see and smell and taste things that are around you, I think we would have absolutely no problem having an intuitive understanding of physiological state space, the way we do for three-dimensional space. I think that we would immediately be able to recognize our various internal organs as intelligent agents navigating that space and solving these kind of problems, all the various things that happen during the day. And here's one of my favorite examples of problem solving in physiological and transcriptional spaces. So we have these worms, these are planaria, these are flatworms. And if you put these flatworms in a solution of barium, barium is a non-specific potassium channel blocker. It blocks the ability of these cells to exchange potassium with the outside world. The cells really don't like it, especially cells in the head, because the head is full of neurons. Neurons love to pass potassium. And so what happens is that overnight their heads explode. Literally, it's called head deprogression. They literally lose their heads. But if you leave them in the barium, within a couple of weeks, they grow back a new head. And the new head is completely barium adapted, has no problem with the barium whatsoever. We said, how could this be? We looked at the original heads, the original naive heads. We looked at the barium adapted heads, and we simply did a subtraction and asked, what are the different genes that are expressed here? And we found out that the barium adapted heads have just a small number of genes that were turned on and off to allow them to adapt to this novel stressor. Now here's the amazing part. Planaria never see barium in the wild. There's no evolutionary history of knowing what to do when you're hit with barium. This is not an ecological stressor that they normally have to deal with. So just imagine you're a bunch of cells and you're hit with this incredible physiological stressor you've never seen before. You've got tens of thousands of genes what do you do? How do you know which genes to turn on and off? You don't have time to try combinations. You don't have time for an exhaustive search. You don't have time for hill climbing. You don't have time to try random things because you'll probably kill the cell long before you solve the problem. And yet you were able to navigate from where you are to where you need to be to escape this physiological stressor. And so what I think evolution has done is pivoted some of the same tricks from very simple systems that only solve metabolic problems, eventually to physiological, and then to transcriptional problems. And when multicellularity comes on the scene, large-scale anatomical problems. And so it's never a question of, is something physics and chemistry or is it cognitive? The question is, what kind of cognition and how much?
Yeah, kind of cool.
That's good.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So what I see with that kind of stuff, whenever I run across that kind of information, and I think about the conversation we have with theists and atheists, it's like there's a possibility right there to kind of build a bridge of understanding. Like maybe we can answer each other's questions better rather than just be in total denial on each side. Like, oh, there's no intelligence at, it just happens. Or no, there's got to be God. It's got to be the one that intelligently made it. Like now we have sort of a better understanding of what might really be going on, and it kind of like can help both sides kind of build a bridge, And I think it's fascinating, like that kind of like, I guess like the whole idea of God is it gives you, it somehow gives like an explanatory thing that you don't understand. Like how can we humans, function the way we do from nothing, well, this is giving you that something, so you've got that explanation there for you. So it should make you, it should give you some sort of relief, I guess, So what do you think, Isaiah, does something like that, if that were true, which I think he was giving examples of what we see in nature, does that sort of, I don't know if I would say replace God, or what would you think? Would that be like a better explanation than a God, or does it just kick the can down the road? What do you think?
I think there's a bit of kicking the can down the road, but then I also think that because you're talking about getting down to the cellular level, or that thing was talking about getting down to a very small level, and when you start getting down to that level and think so inconceivably small, where our mind can't really even comprehend what something that small is. And then you start to get into the fact of quantum physics, and you have things that just completely defy our understanding of reality. Like, I don't think the human mind is really meant to completely grasp all of that. So from a theist perspective, I could say very clearly, well, I think God has just made it so complex that it's bound to build a sense of awe and humility inside of us, that we're just seeing a small glimpse of the cosmos, and so that has to humble us. That has to bring us down, ground us, bring us down to earth, in my opinion. So yeah, we have to have humility in approaching all of this, in my opinion. Either side you're on, actually, doesn't really matter if you're atheist or a Christian. Have some humility.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Of course.
What do you think, Jack?
Absolutely. That, I don't know a scientist that isn't a humble person when it comes to studying things. It's an important part, because you can't get into this with an ego. You're trying to see facts, right? It's not about what you could have the most beautiful, hypothesis and model. It explains everything. All it takes is one falsification, and it's back to the drawing board, right?
Right.
You got to be
right.
And have.
And it does. It opens up a lot of interesting questions. Like a lot of people, like there's other videos from Michael Levin here that he addresses, like even beyond that. Like there's a lot of things like, well, where does this intelligence in and very simple cells and systems come from. Like, what do you propose that comes from? And his explanation is, he feels like it's probably comes from the laws of nature, or like some sort of 0 point energy law in nature. And then, he says, but the only problem with that explanation, it's unsatisfying because, laws, when we talk about laws of nature, physics, those aren't prescriptive, those are descriptive.
Yes.
So you can't really get a descriptive thing to make anything. It's not prescriptive, it's descriptive. So the explanation isn't really that satisfying, but it is one that I hear a lot of atheists will promote. Oh, well, it's all based on the laws of nature. That's just the endpoint. But then they also say they agree that laws are descriptive, not prescriptive. So it does. It just is like, I'm like kind of like Jack, kind of agnostic on that, because we've got a mystery, and all it takes is one falsification to go back to the drawing board. So to try to draw something from that would be kind of, it would be a faith statement, I guess, either way.
So listen to this. Like, if you take a look at the way that science has been progressing over the ages, people, hundreds of years ago were doing experiments that they thought were logical, that actually made sense. And they might have actually came to the right conclusion, but they might have done so by faulty methodology, or just they might have accidentally got right on some stuff. So I think if we're to jump forward in a time machine 500 years, the same way that we look at people who existed 500 years ago and were doing their sciences, we think that they were totally backwards and just totally ignorant. But I think in 500 years, that's exactly what they would be thinking about our time, our time period. Like, I think the knowledge that will have been gained in the next couple hundred years will make us look like absolute morons. So I think the humility, we stand at the cusp of the advancements that are being happening right now, and it gives us a sense of like, yeah, look how much we've done. But I mean, who knows what the hell they might have mastered. If you just take a look at how exponentially our knowledge was going over the last 100 years, what might that happen in 1,000 years? Again, that sparks humility again in me, that like, we're doing our best to understand the world. But I think Neil deGrasse Tyson put it like the best. He said, like, there's questions that like I don't even know to ask yet, about the universe. Our advancement hasn't even got to the point that we even know what to search for, because if you think about this, the cosmic background radiation, that came about by a total accident, that they discovered that was even out there. And lots of things happen. Like, let's take your example, like the fingerprints, where the scientist, or not, like the forensic detectives, they used to get fingerprints in like a house after a crime scene. That came about by complete accident, that they discovered that if you heat up super glue, it'll make the fingerprints. You can see the fingerprints, because there was like a super glue factory, and they were noticing that their fingerprints were getting left on the products, And so, it's just stuff that's might come around by accident, and that we didn't even mean to discover something. We're going to discover stuff that will totally blow away our understanding of the universe.
An example that one of my favorite examples is about time, with Einstein's general relativity. Like, for so long, everybody figured out, time is really a philosophical thing. It's like a concept. It's not a thing. Time isn't like some physical thing. It's just a concept of measurement. And then Einstein had a dream, and in his dream, he imagined, how time works, that it's actually physical. It can bend. It can, it's related to gravity, and it bends and changes with gravity, just like light does and stuff like that. So, and all the philosophers of the time, all the physics were like, well, this is just it's just a huge contradiction. Like, time isn't a thing, dude. Like, you're totally, we don't know what time, it's not something we can even imagine. Like, and philosophers just laughed at him, and everybody laughed, and then the experiment was done, and now we understand time bends and all that stuff. And it's like, who would have thunk it? And it isn't like Einstein figured it out by doing some fancy experiment. No, he had a freaking dream. Like, how does that work? Like, so there's a lot of mysteries in the world that you can never say, like, it's so hard to falsify. Like, even falsification, like, a lot of people say, well, if it's not falsifiable, it isn't real science or whatever. And I think there was this example where some planets were moving. Here, let me pull it up. This is really interesting. Let me see here.
JB, how's the treatment treating you, by the way?
What, the dialysis?
Yeah.
It's killing me.
My brother just started. I'm asking because my brother just started.
It's a different experience for everybody. I'm there with people that they walk in, they get dialyzed, they walk out. And then there's people like me that don't have a good time with it. And there are people that come in walking and they leave in a stretcher. It all really depends on the person, really. He'll know within a week.
Well, they had to whack off his leg.
I'm sorry.
Really bad diabetes. And yeah, so I didn't even know that he started that. My cousin actually told me. So yeah, it's pretty tragic.
Tell him to hang in there every day. Like, every dialysis you finish is a good one.
Unless you're in a stretcher.
Well,
maybe your body recovered there from that.
So it's about being alive.
Right.
That's the main goal.
You got that, Scott?
Yeah, I got it. I'm just kind of reading it to make sure I'm going to pull it up. It's the right one. Make sure I get to
an interesting story is that the guy who had the first germ theory, that there was like these small germs that were out there that could get people sick. Whenever he first came out with that idea, he was mocked like mercilessly. People thought that was absolutely crazy. And so a lot of people didn't listen to him until he started actually, he couldn't actually prove it, but the only thing he could do was just have people, start washing their hands in certain areas. And I read with almost overnight, like 30%, there was like a 30% reduction in child and, birth deaths. So, but yeah, he was treated pretty badly by other people. So I think when people come out with different ideas, as you just said right now, it can be so shocking to people that it could displace our concepts of ourselves in the universe, that the only way to really deal with it is just to reject it or ridicule it. But I think as time passes, the science will vindicate people, and then we start to understand how. I think the great thing about science is that every time you discover stuff, you realize how much more there is still to discover, right?
Mm-hmm.
It opens up more questions, more ideas. Like, once we discovered the quantum realm, we started to realize, wow, this is 1,000 times more complex than we ever thought possible. So it gives us more questions, more research needs to be done, more experiments.
Absolutely. That one for the falsify, I can't find the article for some reason, but it was it's really interesting. I don't want to get it wrong if I go and explain it, but basically there's a lot of things that, the point is that we can always learn new stuff, and paradigms do get shifted. Because we can't falsify something doesn't mean that we know the truth necessarily. That's why science is tentative, like new evidence, even stuff we think we're so sure about can be turned around, like Jack said, one falsification and boom, we got to go back to the drawing board.
There's actually an excellent essay that was written by Isaac Asimov called The Relativity of Wrongness.
Mm-hmm.
and it's really good. The example, if I'm remembering it correctly, was at one time the best knowledge that we had told us that the Earth was flat,
Mm-hmm.
and then later on, like Aristophanes and whatnot, we figured out that it was a sphere.
Mm-hmm.
And then we finally got into outer space, and we learned that it's actually an oblate spheroid.
Mm-hmm.
You
Wait,
know?
God made the Earth flat. I'm just saying that.
but the point of the thesis is, you know, if like in every case, you could say the theory was wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but the thinking that the world is a sphere is less wrong than thinking it's flat,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
right? So it's
Mm-hmm. It's
you know,
relative
just to show the nuance you can learn with
Mm.
science as things progress, right?
Yeah, because in some points of view, the flat Earth still works. You know, the flat Earth model works really well. You know, when we measure distances and do different things. But if we expand out and we start talking about greater distances around, then it falls apart. You know.
Yeah, and eclipses and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the paradigm has to kind of change. It's almost like quantum theory, you know, quantum field theory versus classical Newtonian physics. Like one's just not going to work on the view of the other one. And then they're looking for these ways to unify the two, which is like this
Right.
big toe or theory of everything. you
Gut
know.
theory, grand
Yeah.
unified theory.
Yep, to unify it all. Yeah, it's very interesting, and you know that's always been my that's always my gripe with people. Like even anybody who's really so sure about their favorite pet view, there's something about that just I don't really resonate with, because I'm one of these people that I'm so open minded. Like I love it when the apple carts are turned over. Like when the James Webb Telescope says that the universe may be older than we thought because of some of the observations, you know, a lot of people get mad about that or whatever. And I'm like, I find that very funny, and you know, I think that's great. Like I wish it was true, because I like to see stuff get overturned, you know.
Yeah, so Scott, I do want to say this last thing because I do got to get going here.
I got to get ready.
I'm
too.
starting by Sunday, and I actually have more productive things to do than chatting with a bunch of godless heathens like you two guys. But,
Yeah, exactly.
no,
Welcome
I'm just
to the
kidding.
cult.
But no, but like growing up, my parents are ministers, and so they would always talk about other religions as being like false religions and stuff. And I remember like thinking, how exactly was I just born into the right like religion? You know what I mean? Like I had to start questioning things and asking them about their religion and things I found that didn't make sense. And so when I started doing that, my parents would get really upset with me about asking questions, and they would treat it similar to just like being like, you know, just disrespectful or whatever. But I had a genuine curiosity, and they didn't allow me to ask those questions like in a safe manner. And what that did was eventually just caused me to completely reject the faith and wanting to look into all the other different religions. So like JB, if you look at me, I'm head to toe, I'm covered like with all the world religions, like everywhere. And I was pretty bad hedonist for many years myself. But let's just say that for me, it's still hard for me to wrap my mind around the fundamental right-wing Christians who think that we have like all the answered, everything figured out, and everyone needs to get in line with our ideas about morality, gender, sexuality, all that stuff. It's mind-blowing to me. Like I can't believe that people have that level of hubris, because I'm a Christian and I don't even get relatively close to that level of certainty about stuff. Like I think the Bible might just be 1% of the bigger, you know, the bigger plan that God is working on. So I don't think everything that we're going to know about the universe or religion or spirituality is contained within the Bible. I've learned too much from other people's religions that's helped me in my own faith to conclude that there's no truth inside of other people's religions, you know? So I just can't close my mind off to the point where I'm rejecting other people's thoughts or other people's lived experiences, you know?
But let
So
me
I
ask you
think
this.
that's, yeah.
Not to cut you off. What got you back
Please.
to Christianity? Did you just realize you were special?
That I was
Like,
special?
well, yeah, you're
Are you trolling
special.
me?
You know, you were born in the right religion, and you figured it out and came back. No, just kidding. But I was just going to ask you, what keeps you into Christianity, though?
Well, you know, I study history, like that was my major, and we study history based on BC and AD, before Christ and after Christ, and I could just tell you what my life was after Christ and what my life was before Christ. I could tell you that on my wedding night, I was so drunk and so depressed. I literally got so drunk, I threw up inside of the bathtub in a hotel. And I was so drunk, I couldn't even crawl out of the bathtub because I was so drunk. So I had to spend like an hour inside of my own vomit, to the point where I could sober up to where I could crawl out of it. So I know the kind of nights that I had prior to Christ, and I know what my life has been afterwards. So that to me is the ultimate proof. That might not be scientific or retestable in the kind of way that maybe scientists or atheists might want to criticize on
It's
philosophical
personal
grounds.
experience. Yeah, personal
It's just personal
experience.
experience. That's all I have to say. But but I'm not someone who's like, oh, you don't believe in Jesus? Okay, you're going to go to hell. You're gay, you're going to go to hell. You're trans, you're going to go to hell. Like, that's not, I don't think in those kind of terms, you know? That's not.
And, you know, to be fair, I mean, everybody sort of is a very strong impulse to align your beliefs based on your feelings and stuff. I mean, there's people that just feel good about being a skeptic. Like, that's part of what makes people conspiracy theorists, is that they feel emotional high or something by being the smartest guy in the room. Or there's people that there's people that want to be the skeptic, you know, they want to feel that way, and so they want to always take that hard line because of their emotional feeling. Same with Christianity, same with everything. What I try to do is realize that about myself.
Oh, did I lose you?
And I just try to always remind myself that, oh, you're still with us?
There we are.
Okay. Yeah, so I just try to understand that, and like you said, take a very humble view, and just, you know, understand that my feelings can mislead me. I can be misled by my feelings, and but at the same time, you know, you're a human being. You have to
Right.
genuinely believe what you believe because of your feelings. And maybe somebody could say, "Hey, Scott, you're a skeptic because of your feelings," even though you're trying to say that that shouldn't be your anchor.
That's interesting.
At the end of the day,
That's
it could be, you know.
I just do want to say in these talks, just if you ever feel like you're humble, just remember I'm more humbler than you. So
That's right.
have some humility there. Hey,
That's
no, but
right.
really, JB, thank you for your time. Scott, thank you for your time. I do want to say just one quick thing. That it's good to have these kind of talks where we're hammering things out, because like where I live in South Korea and North Korea, they have completely severed lines of communication. Like they used to have lines of where they could talk about, you know, doing X, Y, and Z, but literally at the DMZ, they'll just stop answering the phone. They'll just, South Korea is trying to reach out, and they'll just go fornicate yourself. You know, so I think it's very good to keep lines of communication, whether it's in here or Ukraine or you know, Palestine. What's going on there? We need to be talking, and we need to be respecting each other's journeys. So thank you guys for your time, gentlemen.
Yeah, man.
JB.
Good
Right on,
night,
buddy.
man.
All right. Bye bye.
Take care.
Yep. All right, Jack. Well, it was nice meeting you too, man. I enjoyed getting to know you. I've seen you a few times in the comments on some of these groups, and I don't think I've ever really engaged with you too much, but I have seen your name a lot. So, and tonight especially.
Hopefully we'll engage some more.
Yeah, we'll do it again, man, and I'll invite you for the next one, and hopefully we'll get more people to kind of come in, and we'll have another fascinating conversation.
Absolutely.
All right, brother. You have a good night, man.
You too, buddy.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Cheers.